Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Graventon. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, conventional wisdom dictates that if you go through the trouble of building a political apparatus in the several states that are important to the primary cycle, and if you want to make sure that you get the pledged delegates, that you would leave the apparatus in place for that long. However, as the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism have been apt to remind us all throughout this presidential primary process, the conventional wisdom with respect to New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini is cast aside. And part of what this all comes down to is the fact that he is attempting to rewrite the rules. He's all about being against the system. Well, that doesn't work well because it goes against everything that we know to be the fact with respect to the way our political system works. And then with respect to the entire electoral process, he just ignores things. And now that he's shaken things up with respect to his campaign staff and personnel, we hear that his new right-hand man, Paul Manafort, has come out and said this crazy thing about Ted Cruz, comparing him to the Gestapo or the Nazis, using Gestapo-like tactics. And I have a soundbite that I'm going to cue up right now to just give you an idea of just how absurd things have gotten in the Trump camp. So here we go. It's coming right.
What is fair game to win a delegate? Is threatening a fair game? Is threats a fair game?
It's not my style. It's not Donald Trump's style.
What is?
I'll tell you, but
what
it is.
Can you
but
do?
it is Ted Cruz's style, and that's going to wear thin very fast.
You think he's threatening delegates?
Well, he's threatening that there. You go to these county conventions and you see the Gestapo tactics, the scorched earth tactics.
Gestapo tactics.
Yeah, they are.
That's a strong word.
Well, you look at. We're going to be filing several protests because the reality is, they're not playing by the rules. But
they're not playing by the rules? I mean, what on earth is this man thinking? It just goes to show that he is not serious as a candidate. He being Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini. He doesn't care. He's playing a very dirty game. This is the type of character assassination that we've spoken of going back to whenever Donald first officially threw his hat in the ring.
It's Goebbels tactics all over again. It's the same thing Goebbels would do. It's what the Nazis did when, they would round up and label, their opponents, those that opposed them. Well, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. And it turns right around that it was the Nazis that were doing it. It's all projection. And this is a projection of the highest order. I don't think Manafort understands anything about the history of the Gestapo at all. I don't think.
Yeah, because if he did, he would realize that the Gestapo didn't come into existence until after 1933, after Hitler became Der Fuhrer. They didn't exist when he was going through the democratic process. So Manafort is basically throwing out there some bovine excrement. And folks, if I sound a little bit off, it's because I'm still suffering from thrombosis bovine excrementia, which is the only way that I can think of to properly define a sinus infection. But it goes to show that what these Trump-tardians are doing is taking American polity, dragging it down into the gutter, and leaving us with a wholly unpleasant system, a system that has no place in an open and honest society or a republic like the United States.
Well, exactly what Manafort was talking about there, using Gestapo tactics, threatening people. Well, that was a veiled threat on him. He even
Mhm.
said we're going to be filing money protests, so we know it's coming. See, this is the whole thing that happens, and what makes these types of individuals predictable. They say exactly what they're going to do right out in the open, but they shroud it with a whole bunch of nonsensical drivel that people will latch onto more than the actual fact. That is part, again, of propaganda tactics.
Mhm. And it what it really speaks to is the way that Donald Trump really has no grasp of the issues. The reason that he's not doing well with the delegates, the unpledged delegates, is because he's been dismantling the political machinery that was in place. That tells me that he has no serious plan of vying for the highest office in the land come for the general election in November. We know as much from Stephanie Sigliskiani, who was a former manager of a Trump CPAC or super PAC, when she said that he really was telling them not to expect anything. And it goes to show that all of this projection that he's done attacking Cruz with respect to the super PAC that put up that ad with the images of Malaria Trumpolini, the check thumper that she put into that magazine, he ought to know that you, as a candidate, cannot have by federal law contact with these super PACs. But he had contact with his own. Why is this not being investigated?
Well, because Trump thinks he is above the law. He thinks he's untouchable. And the problem is, nobody wants to hear the facts and the truth about it. And again, I go back to the analogy that I've made before about being in a machine gun nest surrounded by a bunch of sandbags. And all the candidates that were in the field were each one of the said sandbags. Now that the candidate field is narrowed down to really only one individual that is viable, Trump has to, in his campaign, have to create some new kind of barricades or new kind of sandbags instead of actually facing Cruz. No, their new kind of sandbag is these wet cardboard boxes of insinuations and veiled threats that they're putting up to hide behind. And they're doing it all with projection. We're going to file many protests. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Cruz did this. Cruz attacked my wife. Cruz is a liar. Lying Ted. Blah, blah, blah. These are all new barricades that they put up to hide behind in order to not have to face Ted Cruz toe to toe. That's what it is.
Yeah. And it goes to show just how intellectually disingenuous Trump and his camp are. Because, if you were serious about running a campaign, Jeremy, would you dismantle your political machinery?
Absolutely not, because it would be strategically unsound.
Yeah. Why on earth would he do this? Either he's incompetent, that he doesn't realize how the system works, or two, that he's just an agent provocateur put in here to divide the base of the Republican Party. And look at what he's done with the Cruz derangement syndrome. I think that this has been part of the plan all along, to divide and conquer the Republican base, thereby allowing a smooth path for Hillary to take the nomination. If he were, by some cruel twist of fate, to take the nomination of the gutless opposition party, I can imagine already that he would just stand up and say, right after he got it, I was just kidding. This was just a publicity stunt. Goodbye.
Yeah. We've alluded to this before, and this is one of my initial, assertions of why I thought he was running. Trump only cares about Trump, and that is evident throughout his entire campaign. That's all he cares about is Trump. But here's the thing. Regardless if he gets the nomination or not, regardless if Hillary is president or not. And regardless if Ted Cruz gets the nomination and beats Hillary, or whoever becomes president, Trump is going to make billions of dollars over this. This is all, it's almost like his whole campaign is one giant marketing scheme, is what it comes down to.
That's all it is.
That's all it is. Now, the strategy behind it and what he's done with firing his campaign staff all across the states where he's won, especially in Ohio
and Florida.
In Florida, two key states that have always played a huge part in the nomination process. He has nobody on the ground there. Now I'm going to go back and make another comparison to the game Risk. I've made this comparison before with regard to foreign strategy and foreign policy. I'm going to do it with this. I would love to sit down and play Trump in a game of Risk and have a nice friendly wager on it. Get somebody to cover me and do it for, well, I don't know, everything he owns. And I'll guarantee you, if he plays Risk the way he runs his campaign, he will lose within 2 hours. Because what he's doing, one of the key tenets of the game of Risk is you have to fortify those things of which you control. When you take over a territory, you fortify it. You leave enough people there to stave off any kind of invasion or attack.
Well, you know, Jeremy, it goes to another point you've made, and that is Risk or any type of strategic game requires patience. You have to have patience. You have to be willing to wait it out. And that's how you can always see those that when the die seems cast against them, they're able to come back. What is the one thing that most successful people have always had? It's patience. When you look at Thomas Alva Edison, he had patience. When you look at Henry Ford, he had patience. When you look at all of the great minds, look at Winston Churchill in the darkest days of World War II. Yeah. He had patience. That's something that does not cross the mind of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is like a petulant child. He lacks the ability to have patience. And I think this is going to come back to bite him each and every time. We have to be proactive when it comes to an election cycle, because we as the conservatives always face an uphill battle with the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They are always stacked against us. Why? Because they are operating from this mindset of promoting and supporting the Fabian socialist agenda. Come hell or high water, that is what they're going to do. They are very predictable with respect to that, and they will work at it and chip away at it. They themselves are dogged in their patience. But Trump, he's impatient. I believe that's why he's consistently inconsistent on so many separate issues. And we've seen it all throughout this campaign. You remember in what I believe it was the second nationally televised gutless opposition party presidential candidate debate where he tried to attack Cruz for his New York values statement. Well, he did it again today. He did it again today. He visited the 9/11 memorial for the first time, which I mentioned on today's earlier Solo Flight episode. He visited that and used it as an opportunity to attack Ted Cruz on the New York values statement. And that, again, shows impatience. Impatience because he feels that it's necessary to politicize one of the great national tragedies that has been a defining characteristic of the 21st century. But I've got something to say to Donnie. Donnie, American values surpass New York values. American values must come to the epicenter. You are trying to vie for an office where you will be representing all Americans. And I know you don't believe that there is a world outside of New York City. Now, this is not an attack on the people of New York, but it is a statement to Donald Trump. It is time you remember that there is more in this country than New York City, than Atlantic City, or your casinos, wherever they may be, or your Florida properties. There is more than the East Coast. I know you don't like to believe that, but there really is more than that little niche of America. There are 50 states,
he lives on his own little planet.
Mm-hmm.
His own little planet called Trumptardia, and it's got several moons that surround him. You know,
Quaff
Corey
1, Quaff
Lewandowski.
2.
Yeah, Quaff 1, Quaff 2. Corey Lewandowski, he's quite the moon.
Paul Manafort.
Bat. Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Ann Coulter, although she would only be considered to be, you know, kind of like a...
she's a dwarf moon.
She's a dwarf moon, yes, absolutely.
Oh, by the way, Annie, little orphan Annie Yap Yap has come out and called cruise supporters swine. Annie, we're going to swat that little dog Fanny of yours and throw you in the kennel. You have lost your speaking privileges. Bad girl. Bad little orphan Annie. Yep, 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 yep. Cruise voters are swine. Bad girl. Unacceptable. Into the kennel.
You know, she's like... She's
mental.
Absolutely mental. She's mental. You know, it's like she's Stacy from Wayne's World. Remember her? Hi, Wayne. Hi, Stacy. You know, I don't even want to get on the topic of her a whole lot. And I said topic, and I noticed I said topic and not her. I don't know anybody in their right mind that would want to get on it. But anyways,
Bill Maher. Wait, what?
But it again, all of these little insignificant terra firma troglodytes that orbit around Trumptardia, they're nothing more than, again, wet cardboard boxes that are taking the place of sandbags for deflection. They have no substance. They never will have any substance. They're regurgitating, and a lot of them, even the Trump tards that keep arguing when presented with the facts. You know, there's a mutual friend of ours, Randy. I think you may have read the comments that her comments are no longer there in the thread, but a good friend of ours, Kev, and he's not the one, but it was on his thread, and there was comments made by this individual where she made this claim that she was direct descendants of James Madison. Or
how is that possible?
Not
yeah, it was James Madison. How is that possible?
Yeah,
James Madison didn't have any children.
Right.
His siblings didn't have any children.
Right. All of his lineage died with him. So, you know, she's sitting there doing this. Oh, you're wrong. And she called me un-American because I support the illegal illegal Canadian cruise. Now, that's all she had. That was the core nucleus of her substance, and all of her incoherent, mindless rantings that she did. And I came right back and said, and posted with facts, as did several other people posted with facts. And all she could do was revert back to the same rhetoric. It's like if someone says this to you, go back to page whatever and clause this or paragraph such and such, and this is the response you give. It's like she has this book called Arguing on Behalf of Trump for Idiots. That's what it is. And it's nothing more than a script. They have no substance. They are repeating what they are told to repeat because they bought the lie. It was repeated often enough to them that it became truth to them.
Which is straight out of Goebbels. That's straight out of Goebbels.
Yes, and these people are stupid. This is the tactic that they always
use. It's the tactic they always use. And don't you love how they called Rubio the robot?
Yeah.
It was always Rubio that had the canned speeches. No, I think it's Trump that has this canned, rambling speech that has no connection with reality whatsoever. He constantly repeats the same thing over and over again. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to build a wall, and the wall's going to be great, and everybody loves my hair. I have great hair. I have Trump steak. You should love Trump steak and Trump hair in your Trump steak because it's great and wonderful, and nobody's got a bigger hand than me. Yeah. give me a break.
407 bankruptcies ago.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I again, these people are, they're stupid. Now, there are some Trump supporters that convey that they would rather Ted Cruz, they would prefer Ted Cruz as president, but they're supporting Trump because they don't think Cruz has enough traction or will maintain enough traction in order to get the nomination. And I can understand that because there's a little bit of, of the element of the blindness that goes along with that, because they're not looking at the facts prior to this whole election season. Everything that Trump is talking about, everything, whether it be building a wall, national security, foreign policy, so on and so forth, even though he doesn't really have anything of a foreign policy other than what he plagiarized from various different individuals and stole from TV shows. But all of the things that all of his supporters are latching onto, Ted Cruz has been saying ever since he stepped foot in the Senate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They forget about that, but here comes Trump, and they say, well, nobody, Cruz never got any traction with it. Nobody was paying any attention to Cruz. That's the problem. They were not paying attention to what he was saying. And here comes Trump as the quote unquote outsider, which he claims to be, starts saying all these things, and all of a sudden everybody latches onto it as if it's some kind of, nuance and some kind of some new rhetoric, as if it was never spoken before.
It's bizarre, and it just goes to show that he really is a blank canvas.
Yeah,
with his bigly mind, and I've got to remind him. I've got to remind him that American values are biglier than New York values. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Trumpus. That's just the way it goes.
Well, the problem is with him understanding American values, they're too big for him to put into his smally little hands. He can't hold on to it because his hands are too small. That's the problem. Trump is the type of individual where he even claims, I'm very hands-on. I'm hands-on in a big way. I'm so hands-on that it's just, you can't be any more hands-on than me.
You're going to get tired of me groping you.
Yeah. And the problem is he's not hands-on with anything.
No.
It's obvious. Look at his campaign. Look at everybody that is working in his campaign. They're the ones going out doing all the legwork. They're the ones going out repeating all the stuff that he wants people to say. In fact, Trump doesn't even come up with this stuff. Mm-hmm. He hired somebody, big people to, very rich and smart people to come up with these smartly things for him to say in a bigly way, blah, blah, blah. And
then he should fire him. He should fire him.
Absolutely.
They let him down.
Yeah,
they have let him down. And more than that, they've let down the American people. We deserve better. No, we demand better than this, because what we see with the candidacy of Donald Trump has been nothing but one steady stream of ad hominem attacks against decent people. Why has he not attacked Hillary Clinton with the same sort of zeal that he has attacked Ted Cruz, that he has attacked his fellow Republicans? I have an answer for that. It's because he's good friends with the Clintons. Remember, he had a phone call just a month before announcing his candidacy for the 2016 election cycle. Come on, people. There are no such things as coincidences when it comes to this type of matter. This is what we have seen with Trump. We know this is the case. We know this is how he's going to act. His past conduct is the best measuring stick by which to project or to predict his future determinations. He is predictable in that he is such an outlandish figure. And why is he such an outlandish figure? Well, he has professed a strong Fabian socialist type agenda from the very beginning. And that is allowing him to embrace this ideology of the right, this two-dimensional caricature that the left has always attempted to typecast the right with, and he's going to fulfill all of the phony wars, like the phony Republican war on women, all of that crap. They're going to play that because it falls right into their hands.
Well, he's embraced it because he wants to amplify it. And that's the thing. He's not against the, attacking women. He's not against it at all. In fact, at one of his rallies, he says, I should have all the women go into the back kitchen to make me a sandwich. He has constantly attacked women. Now, he's attacked Megyn Kelly. And, we went after Megyn Kelly, of course, because we don't hold any punches. If somebody's wrong, they're wrong. We're going to point it out. And it still comes down to the underlying thing between him and her. He hates women. Mm-hmm. He objectifies them.
He sees them as objects for his pleasure.
He objectifies them. He manipulates them. He beats them, proverbially speaking. He mentally abuses them.
He cheats on them.
The whole thing, and he does this. And again, they're going to drive home this whole, war on women thing against Trump, which wouldn't be hard for Hillary to do. But I think that's what Trump wants. Because again, at the end of the day, it's going to put money in his pocket. Remember, he has no problem changing to being whatever he needs to be in order to accomplish what he needs to accomplish. If he has to change his lifestyle, and he doesn't care what people think about that. He's a multi-billionaire. And he's going to be even larger of a multi-billionaire when it's all said and done with, because this is nothing more than a dog and pony show for him to fatten his pockets, period.
And that's what he's wanted to do from the very beginning.
Right.
There's no way to get around this, folks. It's all about Trump. It's always been about Trump for as long as Trump has been an adult. And for those who want to sit there and say that Trumpalini has never been a politician, it's just not true. First of all, in order to be a decent businessman, you have to be a politician. Politics plays an essential and critical role within any business. Then there's the fact that he did try to run for president before in Ross Perot's Reform Party. Folks, there's no way to deny this. It is a quintessential part of who he is and what he has done. And to try and get around that, or to try and ignore that, is to act at your own detriment. It is to put yourself at the mercy of a feckless politician. So it steals credibility away from the followers of the Donaldists, who are sitting there thinking that they have this opportunity to really reflect upon the way this country works. And his election cycle and style has been to throw ad hominem after ad hominem, to attack people just for being the way they are. And that is a major problem because it is childish, but it's beyond childish. It goes to the realm of stupidity. And I really do mean that. He acts stupidly. And yes, that is a real word. He may not know that, but it goes to show anyone that has to brag about their IQ, anyone that has to talk about how bigly the words are that they use, has a major problem. And that major problem works against them. And it's going to rub the people the wrong way. And I suspect that we all know this. And the reason that it comes down to that is that nobody likes an arrogant braggart, especially when he's projecting himself as being something greater than what he really is. That cannot and will not stand. It will not resonate with the electorate. And I think that's part of the reason why he's lost 12 head-to-head polls against Hillary Clinton and even Vermont Senator Northface Bernie Sanders in the polling for the general election. If it comes down to him as being the presumptive nominee of the gutless opposition party by some cruel twist of fate, he will go straight to defeat. We cannot ignore this, folks, and that is why it is so important, so critical that we put forth a viable candidate. So what we see is that we have a repeat of the problems that have played out in all of Donald Trump's campaign stump speeches thus far. And it's this: he's got nothing to work off of. He's just basically pulling stuff out of thin air. And it leaves good people like us and our cherished listening passengers and audience to come to the conclusion that there's something wrong, that there is something tyrannical about what he's doing, because he really does remind me a lot of President Obama. And one of the things that comes to mind, particularly when he's trying to say that we should open up the libel law and get rid of the public figure exception, is something that Obama said to a bunch of graduates. And I'm going to cue this little soundbite up right now. Here we go.
We, the people, chose to do these things together because we know this country cannot accomplish great things if we pursue nothing greater than our own individual ambition. Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than some separate, sinister entity that's at the root of all our problems. Some of these same voices also do their best to gum up the works. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner. You should reject these voices.
Why should we reject those voices? Those voices are the voices that gave birth to this great representative republic of ours. It just goes to show that Obama is diametrically opposed to the way that this country was founded and what this country stands for and represents, just as I'm starting to feel that Donald Trump is as well. We have to go back to the true cornerstone of our society, and that cornerstone has always been the United States Constitution. It is there to explicitly limit the scope and application of government at all levels.
Trump has actually done this exact same very thing at every single one of his rallies. Every single one of them. Instead of telling people, oh, reject the voices, don't listen to the Cruz supporters. No. He says, throw them out into the cold. Don't give them their coat. Or if they're going to throw tomatoes or they're going to show up, beat them down and I'll pay the legal fees.
In the past, people like this would be taken out on stretchers.
Yes. So he is actually amplified, again, the notion that we should throw off such means that want to become tyrannical on our country. I'm sorry, folks, but our Declaration of Independence tells us exactly what to do. It lays out what happened, what our founding fathers and our predecessors of countrymen went through, endured under a tyrannical regime. Even the Constitution mentions this as far as people, being traitors to the United States, committing treason, so on and so forth. You have to take both of those documents and hold them side by side and link them as not so much co-equals, but working documents in and of each other. Both documents support each other. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for our Declaration of Independence, which actually outlined many of the fundamental roots within the Constitution, because the Declaration itself was actually based in natural law principles. But we're not supposed to worry about tyranny taking a foothold in this country. Our founding fathers warned repeatedly against it. And a lot of people say, well, look at those were different times. There was more of a chance of tyranny happening because our country is so young and not really defensible.
Tyranny needs no era. Tyranny can exist anywhere.
Sure. It's pure unadulterated evil. Why? Because tyranny does one thing. It deprives individuals of their natural God-given rights. It goes completely against the tenets of the natural law system. Tyranny is nothing more than an applicable tool in the toolbox of Satan himself. And he will use his entourage. He will use his spawns, his little minions to do his bidding for him.
And that's why we always have to be so proactive and vigilant when it comes to our fundamental and inalienable rights, because our founding fathers expected us to be very vigilant and proactive with respect to safeguarding and maintaining those rights. It just goes to, unlike what Obama says, where he tries to say that racism is an inherent part of our DNA and therefore we can never escape it. The actuality is that our resistance to tyranny, our resistance to these forces of oppression, despotism, to these wannabe potentates is actually the intrinsic part of our DNA. That is what made our founding fathers come together and create the longest lasting constitution in all of world history. And as we have stated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, this tradition goes all the way back to the field at Runnymede, where the barons forced King John I Plantagenet to sign the Magna Carta. You know, Magna Carta gave us such things as due process under the law, no taxation without consent of the governed. Those are quintessential pillars of the entire edifice that builds the Republican structure of government that we have here in the United States. It's not something we can walk away from. It's not something that we can ignore, but it's what the historical revisionists are attempting to deprive from us. It's what they're attempting to write out of our history. It's what they want us to forget, because then we become more malleable, like putty, in the hands of these Fabian socialists, these indoctrinators that are running rampant in all of our institutions of education, from primary education straight through postgraduate levels. It's taken an effect because they have been pushing for this incessantly and tirelessly for well over 100 years now. We've seen it warned about with Zygmunt Dobbs and his great magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard way back in the late 50s, early 60s. So it's showing no signs of going away anytime soon, or at least in the foreseeable future.
And again, they want us to ignore it. We are not allowed to ignore it, because if we allow ourselves to ignore the possibility of a tyrannical regime taking over our country, if it comes to that, to where people just ignore that, well, they have ignored their birthright. They have ignored our shared constitution. They have basically taken it, thrown it out the window, and said, yeah, this doesn't do anything for me anymore. So I'm just going to ignore it, and I'm going to become one of the individuals that allows to be, this country to be shackled, because that's what will happen. Now, I want to go back to Trump for just a second. And this whole play on with, ignore the voices of this and ignore the voices of that. When he says he wants to open up the libel laws, folks, those that speak out against the government have the unalienable right to do so. It is right in our First Amendment. It is us and we the people petitioning our government for a redress of grievances. We have the right to question people, especially those that lead us or want to lead us. And if questioning them brings up little insignificant things in the eyes of many called facts, and they don't want to, those facts to be exposed, well, here comes another veiled threat. We're going to open up the libel suits. We're going to make it to where people cannot speak freely.
Yeah, he's doing that because he desires a chilling effect on speech. He doesn't want anyone to be able to speak out against him. And this all speaks to the type of twisted machinations that we see from totalitarian types, or as you like to call them, Trumptalitarians. What it comes down to is they know that they cannot win in the marketplace of ideas. Therefore, they feel the absolute necessity to try and clamp down on any type of speech that they would deem as derogatory against them, as taking a position against them. But there's a problem with that. the way that our representative republic is designed is to allow the American people to have the freedom of expression. That's included within the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And the fact that it takes such a lofty and prominent position within the Bill of Rights speaks to the great weight and importance that our founding fathers placed upon it. It is an integral part of what it means to be an American citizen. It is an integral part of how things work in this country. And to ignore that is to operate against the foundational image that our founding fathers derived for this country, meaning created for this country at its inception over 200 years ago. And we can't ignore that. It's something that if we ignore it, it is to our own great peril. And if we continue to basically shove our heads in the sand and suffer from this ostrich syndrome, we're going to see the problems of this campaign cycle grow out of control, grow to a point to where we have no control over it, where we are incapable of stopping it, and that in and of itself will work against us time and again, because we know that the Democrats are certainly going to use these so-called gaffes against Trump, and that they will be relentless in their attacks, and that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are not going to back down, because they see this as their opportunity to get rid of him and to promote the candidate that will most likely lose to their darling in the general election.
It's very simple. It really is. To put it all into perspective, and to simplify it as best as I can, we the people, as we said numerous times on here, are the true sovereigns and ultimate wielders of authority. If you have an individual that has the authority, but yet no way to convey that authority, i.e. petitioning the government for redress of grievances, they have no authority at all. They may be authority on paper at that point, but in order for authority to exist, you have to have the ability to actually recognize it and then convey it. If you take the conveyance out, then the authority is stagnant and pretty much non-existent. That is what Trump is wanting to do. He does not want the people to have the authority, because we the people will hold him accountable. And when we speak up to do this, when we exercise our authority by way of our freedom of speech, that is one of the most powerful things that we have. This is why we're here. This is why we're able to do this for you. If Trump had his way, and God knows that he would do this, if Trump had his way, he would try and shut us down. He absolutely would, because he doesn't like what we have to say. Well, I don't care. In the words of this Trump supporter and mutual acquaintance of ours, Randy, Trump can sod off as far as I'm concerned, because I don't care what he has to say. I don't care what he wants. It's not about him. Cue Dr. Phil, somebody get him on the phone, because Trump, it ain't about you. That's how that works.
But in Trump's mind, everything is about him. He is a classic case of the narcissist that is one that plagues the arena of politics, not just in the United States, but all around the world. You know, Hitler was a narcissist. All of your tin pot dictators were narcissists, and Trump exhibits those characteristics. It's why I would be loathed to put him into the highest office in the land, because when you stop and think about everything that Trump represents, he is working against everything that we hold near and dear here in the United States. I doubt he even understands that we are a representative republic. You know, during one of the CNN town hall debates before the Wisconsin primary, he said that one of the three functions of government was to provide housing, to provide education, and to care for the sick. Well, how is that a conservative value? How does that tie into conservative principles? Because
where
I
is
can
that
think
listed in the Constitution?
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you. Article 9, section existent, clause 0.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it is, because it ain't there.
Yeah. And again, he is putting on this facade. He puts all these things out there that are non-existent because he wants people to think a certain way. He's brainwashing individuals. In fact, he has brainwashed individuals. Individuals that, I have actually held with a certain monicum of respect, mutual acquaintances of ours, and they've completely, I don't even recognize these individuals anymore. They're total strangers. I don't even know who they are anymore. They used to have sound conservative values, or maybe, just maybe, they never really had any sound conservative values, and they were only riding whatever wagon they could jump onto because it was moving slow enough for them, because they're incapable of thinking for themselves. And this is exactly what the Fabians wanted. They want individuals that are not capable of thinking for themselves, individuals that will not try to rock the boat in so much. They really hate people like you and I because we want to capsize the damn boat and force people to either do one of two things: sink or swim. It's called tough love. If there's individuals in this country that don't want to stand up and do the right thing, you have two choices: get the hell out of my way or get run over. Because I'm not going to allow my country to be taken down that path, or allow my country to succumb to the measures of Fabianism or tyranny.
And it's why our founding fathers expected us to be proactive. We have to be proactive. If we are not proactive in the maintenance and safeguarding of our fundamental and inalienable rights, then some potentate, some wannabe dictator, somebody like Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini, will march right in and try and strip and deprive us of those God-given rights. You see, they say that liberty is a fickle mistress, that she constantly needs attention. And I think this is also why Thomas Jefferson went out and said that from time to time, the tree of liberty needs to be watered by the blood of patriots and tyrants alike.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time that the tree of liberty has been watered?
1812.
That is 106 years.
Oh, 200.
No, not quite that much.
204 years.
Yeah, 204 years.
That's
a long time.
Yeah. And again, history, like everything else in life, is cyclical. Life is a teacher. Life is painful. Pain is the ultimate teacher, and pain itself has many different facets, offshoots, that are used to teach certain lessons. We have history. We have life. There's death. There's inconsequential circumstances where people, talk about meaningless things, but ultimately it morphs into something meaningful for one or both of those individuals. You have falling outs of friendships. All of these things are painful. Mm-hmm. They are designed to teach a lesson. And if people do not pay attention to the lessons that are being taught to them, they're going to suffer. And in that suffering, let me simplify this even more. You have a little kid and you have a hot stove. The mother tells the kid, no, don't touch the hot stove. Of course, the kid is going to do it anyways. Why? Because it is in our nature to rebel. It is in our nature. And hold on to that thought for a moment, folks. Tuck it in the back of your mind for just a moment. It is in our nature to rebel. It is human nature to rebel. Now, when the mother tells the child, don't touch the hot stove, the child touches the hot stove. The child gets burned. Now, unless there's something severely mentally wrong with that child, he's not going to touch that hot stove again, because he associates the pain of being burned with what he was told not to do. That is what history does. History has shown us, do not go down this path because it's going to be painful for your country. And yet, here we find ourselves again, the country as that mentally deranged child going right down this path, reaching up its hand and getting ready to put it firmly on top of that hot stove.
Hell, at this point, they're getting ready to stick it straight into the flame.
Right. Now, getting back to this concept I told you to tuck away, it is in our nature to rebel. We have to rebel against those such things. We have to rebel against ignoring history. We have to rebel against people telling us, forget the voices that tell you about tyranny because of blah, 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 blah. I'm, another communist and my wife's got bigger arms than me. I don't care. You're not going to tell me what to do. Nobody on this earth is big enough to tell me what to do. If I want to wonder or prepare or educate myself in order to combat a tyrannical regime, should it take foothold in this country, nobody's going to stop me because it is my right to do so. You cannot infringe upon my rights. It is my right. It is my obligation to myself and to my country and fellow countrymen to not ignore that. It is my obligation to rebel against those things.
And this is why we're called upon to be proactive, because it's not just our own rights that we're seeking to safeguard. We have to seek to safeguard the rights of our fellow citizens. That's
Yes.
what we're called upon as American citizens to do. That is part of the natural law tenets. When you stop and think about it, as pursuant to the natural law, the entire edifice of government is built on the fundamental building block of society, and that is the family. In other words, the familial unit is part of the governmental structure and apparatus. So it starts with the family, moves to the city, municipal government, then to the county government, then to the state governments, then on up to the federal government. And the further away it gets from the basis of the fundamental building block of society, meaning the basis of society in entirety, the more restricted and limited that government must become. Yet we have seen with the way that Trump treats the Federal Bureau of Land Manipulation and Malarkey, which owns, about 98% of the land in our westerlymost states. He doesn't believe that that should go back to the states. He doesn't believe that should go back to the people. Why? Because he thinks it's great that the federal government has it and that they'd keep the land better off than the states would, blah, blah, blah. Hey,
yeah.
Trumpolini, you need to go back and read this thing called private property rights. It's one of the quintessential cornerstones of the system of American polity. I know that it's a little bigly for you, but you can figure out how it works. One would think you, who owns a vast array of properties, would understand how that works, seeing how you've manipulated the law to get your way when nobody else could. And again, it just goes to show that he doesn't think that the law applies to him. He believes that he is a cut above the rest of us, that he is biglier than all of us. Well, it's not quite true.
I'm going to speak about something here that I, in my line of work, in my daily endeavors, I've come to realize this with the individuals I work on behalf of. It's very simple. I can't simplify it any. In fact, I don't think it needs to be simplified any further than this. We, the people, as individuals, are no good to anybody else in our country, especially our families, if we are not capable of maintaining ourselves first, having an understanding of what it is that we have to do in order to maintain our own presence in life. And that means coming down to having a working and understanding knowledge of the United States Constitution.
Yeah,
understanding what your authority is.
And understanding of the Constitution.
Understanding what that is. Being able to accept it and accept responsibility of the duties and obligations that is entailed with that. When you're capable of doing that, not only are you empowered yourself, but now you are able to take care of your family. You are able to take care of the sickly, take care of the individuals that are in need. Folks, we're not against charity at all. But we are against government intrusion on behalf of individuals at the expense of other individuals, otherwise known as welfare.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a distinct difference between charity and welfare. First of all, charity is done out of the kindness of somebody's heart, and there is no expectation of return. There's no expectation of return. With welfare, there's an expectation of return, but it's not really ever enforced, except on the people that they want to enforce it on. This is wrong.
Well, it's theft by any other name. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
It's a practice by the Fabian socialists to tear a country apart.
Sure, it's divisive and it's balkanizing. Now, when I talk about the charity, I'm talking about the charity of when you are able to take care of yourself, have an understanding of what your birthright is, and to apply that. You see an individual that is starving in the streets, so on and so forth, or doesn't have the things that you have. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to them and helping them to help better themselves. And part of that is teaching them what their self-worth is. A lot of people don't have a high value of self-worth anymore, and it is demoralizing to them, and it brings them down. And then when you have a mass quantity of those individuals in society, it starts to bring society down. It's like it's rotting from the inside out.
Well, and when you go to scripture, you see that it says to take care of the poor. The poor will always be with us, but you leave a part of your field there for them to work. You don't just cut it for them. You don't just hand it over to them. You give them a hand up, not a hand out. That is charity. Charity is something that is given of free will, given of your own fruition, something that, as you said, has no expectation of return. That is the way that a system is supposed to work. That is how a nation is able to promote itself and to keep working so that the people feel better and the society comes together. The whole idea here is if you teach a man to fish, you feed them forever. That's the idea.
You yanked it right out of my head.
You want to be able to empower people.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here with Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Our entire purpose here is to empower you with some of the knowledge of something that we know that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to cover, what the historical revisionists aren't going to cover, what the Fabian socialists who have infiltrated all of our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border won't teach anymore. And they don't want to teach it because it comes down to what's important. What is the most important aspect of this great representative republic of ours? It's the notion of sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Sovereignty in the United States comes from the American people. It comes from that fountainhead of true individualized spirit. And from that true individualized spirit, we see what has made America great in her relatively brief yet illustrious history. And so long as we continue to ignore that, it's as though we are ignoring our history and that we will be doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. This is why history is such a great teacher. And we would be basically derelict in our duty if we didn't go and analyze this through a constitutional framework and from a historical framework. Because the Constitution is the bedrock upon which this entire nation is founded. And when you think of what Donald Trump has done, name me one thing that would actually coexist with the Constitution, actually line up with the Constitution. You're going to have a very hard time because he hasn't once, except for maybe a few times when he was questioned about the 14th Amendment, would he bring up the Constitution. Other than that, I think it's too big leap for him. I mean, how else could we explain his radical, off-the-wall statements that have no place in the Constitution? It's just not possible. You know, one of the other things I want to bring up about this conclusion that we have to draw from what Trump has been displaying with respect to not keeping the apparatuses of his political machinery in place throughout the states, and therefore, not being willing to win. It reminds me of Mitt Romney and how he said that he didn't really want to win the presidency in the 2012 election. You see, I loathe and despise that, because it shows that they hold the American people with such little regard that they're willing to play with our futures like that. And that's disgusting to me. It has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. And it goes against this type of representative Republican form of government that is the heart and the basis of what it is to be an American citizen.
Well, it's extremely insulting. Now, I didn't vote for Romney. I wasn't going to vote for Romney. I had no inclination to vote for Romney. But I'm insulted because he pulled this crap with his constituents, those that did vote for him. I never had any intention of winning. I didn't really want to win anyways, blah, blah, blah. So you want to waste everybody's time and energy, play with people's emotions, just because you didn't want to do this? Guess what, folks? To all the Trump supporters out there, it's going to be round 2. It's going to be round 2. And Randy, this is what I fear is going to happen. There's going to be such a bigly letdown of his supporters that the vast majority of them are just going to say, you know what? We wanted an outsider. He turned out to be wrong for us. We went after him and supported him because we're tired of the politicians. Well, there's nobody that we can vote for anymore. We have nobody. They're going to feel alienated. They're going to be emotionally distraught. And then that's going to open the door, even though at this point, Ted Cruz may secure the nomination. If he does, he's the only one that can beat Hillary Clinton. Why? Because his patience grossly outweighs hers. And if he gets elected, which he will, should he get the nomination, but after 4 years, the people are going to be so complacent and so reminiscent of that hatred that they allowed themselves to be a part of, to where after one term of Ted Cruz, we may see the likes of somebody of, I don't know, say Valerie Jarrett come into play as a potential candidate. And at that point, there's going to be so many people in the voting population that have latched onto Trump and say, well, Trump didn't do it for me. He turned out to be a fraud. I wasn't going to vote for Cruz, so on and so forth. I can't vote for a Democrat. They're not going to go out and vote at all. This is part of the agenda. They do not want people to be actively engaged in maintaining our republic. And what easier way for them to do that than to get them to not participate in one of the fundamental premises of voting. When you vote, you are exercising your right. You are petitioning your government for a redress of grievance. Voting, even though it's not mentioned in the First Amendment, it is there. It is there. It is an extension of your freedom of speech. And people are going to forego it. Why? Because they're going to be so entrenched with wanting to. It's going to be an instance of self-preservation. I can't vote for anybody because they're all out to get me. So I'm not going to vote at all, because that way, if I don't vote, then nobody can harm me. Nobody can hurt me. And that's a big mistake. They're going to do it as a defense mechanism, as a means of self-preservation, so that they're not going to be hurt, for a sense of security and safety. They're going to forego their rights and not engage and exercise them so that they feel safe and secure.
And this is all part of the divide and conquer strategy
Yes.
that we've seen put forth by Donald Trump. I think he was put in as a Trojan Trump to divide and conquer. He's wanting to demoralize the disillusioned conservatives. That's why I call him the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. And think about it, folks. He does fit that imagery perfectly. He comes in, he claims and assumes the mantle of an outsider, even though he's been greasing the palms of the so-called establishment for 30 plus years. So he takes on this persona. He acts like this persona is going to give him all the power that he needs. And if he's really not serious about it, he's purposefully toying with these people. Why? Because he's got some idea that he's going to get some gain out of it. He believes that it's going to work out for him. It may be monetary, it may be land grants, it may be something, but Donald never does anything where he's not going to get some benefit out of it. That goes straight to the art of the deal, or mind drunk. Because when you stop and think about it, he has only cared about one thing for the 70 years that he's been on this earth: himself. He's still got that toddler's mentality of where it's me, I. That's all that matters. That's all that's going to play out and be of importance. And you see that in the way that he treats his own followers. Remember when he came out and said that I love the poorly educated? I'm sorry, but that's an insulting statement. It was meant to be insulting, but people didn't take it that way. And I love how Rush Limbaugh came out and tried to defend that. Why are you trying to defend that, Rush? You wouldn't have defended that from any other candidate. So why are you doing it with Trumpolini? I think it goes to the personal friendship that he has with him. And I think it also comes down to this whole notion that he's just fed up with politics as usual as well. But we've got to get past this. That sort of thinking has been detrimental. It has been hurting us time and again, putting us in an untenable situation that only makes matters worse. And if matters continue to get worse, then it is going to require much more drastic measures to get this country back on track. And remember, folks, based on the design of our representative Republican form of government, it must, by its nature, come from we the people, because that is the way our founding fathers developed the system to work. Because if we allowed a singular individual to do it, some messianic figure to do it, that in and of itself would allow a tyranny and an oppressive type of government to exist. Truly, a despotism would be formed, and we are against that, and every shape, form, and facet of that word, because it works against our natural law system.
Here's the thing. When you talk about the demoralization, it reminds me of what my 12th grade English teacher had posted on his classroom wall. It was just a very simple saying. It wasn't even a poster. Memory serves. It was actually just your standard Xerox copy. And it said, and I quote, "The beatings will continue until morale has improved." Now, I want to go back and touch on this Pied Piper thing. Remember the story of the Pied Piper? Yes, he led all the rats out of the city, but all the children followed to their own demise and detriment as well. See, the children, Trump wants to get all the rats out of government. That's fine. I'm all for that. But he wants to do it at the extent of our posterity suffering. The children.
Wait. There's something more to it. Because in the original Pied Piper story, he went away with the children when the town refused to pay him. I think that ties in to Trump perfectly.
Absolutely.
Doing this for a desire of self-gratification.
Yes. Now, the children represent what? Our posterity. The future, our posterity, which is mentioned directly in our preamble of the Constitution. To ordain and establish these things to ourselves and our posterity. It is our obligation to pass this down and preserve and protect our future generations. They are being led astray to their own detriment. This country is being dissolved from within with these individuals. Now, I want to touch about something else regarding Trump. All of his followers, and when you mentioned with Rush defending Trump saying these things, see, people like Rush suffer from a form of battered women syndrome. You know, and it fits perfectly.
Almost Stockholm syndrome too.
Well, all borderline Stockholm syndrome, but it's battered woman syndrome is what it is. Because like the battered woman, well, he doesn't mean it. Oh, he only did it because of this. I still love him. I'm going to support him, even though he's given me 2 black eyes and a fat lip and a broken nose, and then he's broken my ribs, broken my legs. At what point do you wake up and realize that when you're in a situation like that, you have to protect yourself? The only way to do that with this analogy, again, arm yourself, protect yourself with the fundamental rights and tenets of natural law and the Constitution, period. Now, not all women in the battered woman syndrome, eventually, the vast majority of them wake up and realize what's going on. They come to be able to defend themselves. They remove themselves from that situation. Tragically, more often than not, in some cases, it never happens. Why? Because the woman ends up being beaten to death or killed. That is what is happening with these Trump supporters. You are defending him. He is insulting you. He is beating you. He is assaulting you and your families, and you continue to defend him. You do not allow it. And those of us that are being assaulted by him, even though we're not supporters of him, we are not going to stand for it because we are the outsiders looking into that problem. We are the family members that go to the aid of that particular woman in the situation and do everything that we can to try and help her. And what you're doing is you are pushing away and ignoring the very thing that you truly want. People think they know what they want, but in their heart of hearts, in their natural birthright understanding of what they truly want as an American citizen, they want to be individually free. They want to be sovereign. They want to have the authority.
That's part of the natural law tenets.
Yes.
It's written on each and every one of our hearts to desire this, to want to be free, to want to have this greater freedom. And the problem is that we have been led so far astray, so far divorced from our Constitution, that we've begun to forget what it is to be free. We've begun to forget what the true proper scope and application of government is. And again, that's why we say oftentimes on past episodes of the Wright Flyer that the key has been with us since the beginning. That key to unlocking the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny and bondage is the Constitution. If we gain that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of the Constitution, and also our fundamental and inalienable rights, there is nothing that can stop us. That is what is so powerful, so unique, so brilliant and beautiful with respect to the Constitution. That also explains why it is the longest uninterrupted running constitutional document in all of world history. Stop and think about just how much has passed in the time since our Constitution was put down. We saw the French Revolution come and go. We saw the rise and fall of Napoleon. We saw our Civil War. Before that, we saw the Mexican-American War. We saw the War of 1812 before that. Then we saw our Civil War. Then we saw the Spanish-American War. Then we saw World Wars I and II. We saw a man put on the moon. We have seen so much just in the span of time that the Constitution has been in place. That is amazing.
And in the grand scheme of things, it's not even a flash in the pan when it comes to time. But yet, it's almost like, you know, somebody going to cook. You know, let's say someone's making spaghetti. Well, how do you make spaghetti? Well, you boil a pot of water, and then once the water's boiling, you throw your pasta in. You add whatever in there you need to do. I like to put in, you know, about a tablespoon or a teaspoon of salt just to, help agitate things, so on and so forth. Maybe a little bit of garlic or vinegar. But before we can even do that, we have to make sure that the water is boiling. Folks, if we ignore the historical events and the teachings that they have, we're never going to see that water boil. We're never going to be able to make our spaghetti dinner and enjoy it, because we fall short and we stop and eventually just turn it off, and then nothing ever happens. Nothing gets accomplished. I understand that folks are angry. They're upset because the people that they voted for in the last round of elections for our Congress have not done what they said they were going to do. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them have lied. Absolutely lied. Went against everything they set out on the campaign, got elected, and then turned right around and did the exact opposite. I understand that. It infuriates me too. It angers me and Randy as well. However, we have to understand that if we use that as a measuring stick and allow that to use our emotions to go after something that, well, this might fix the problem. I don't want a might fix. I don't want a Band-Aid. I want something. If our country is suffering from a sucking chest wound, I want it clogged, turned off, and fixed. I don't want a butterfly bandage or a little, Flintstones vitamin to help with it. No, I want the problem solved.
Yeah, you would need the invasive surgery to correct the problem.
Yes.
And it comes down to something that Trump has been doing repeatedly. He has been attacking anyone he perceives as being against him for no rhyme or reason, other than he just cannot tolerate any form of disagreement with him. How shallow-minded can one be? But that is the way Trump is. He goes out and he reacts in this way, and it is very detrimental to the country as a whole. And I think this plays into why, as the primary season goes on and on, he's starting to do less and less well. Some of the polls are now predicting that Cruz has made up 10 points in New York just in this week alone. If that keeps up, he will surpass Trump. Trump will not be able to get winner take most in New York, or winner take all, because he'd need 50%, and I don't see him getting it. Now, the question is the dark horse in this candidate going to be, my father was a mailman, John the Mushroom Kasich? Maybe. Yep. I don't know. I wish that he would somehow go trip over a log and then discover a clue of, I can't win this. I'm a jack weasel, and I just need to drop out. That'd be great. That'd be great, Mr. Kasich. Please drop out. Please do something pro-American once in your life, instead of being that disgusting, vile little cancer that you are. Because what you are doing at this point is preventing a real constitutionalists from standing up for and defending this great representative republic of ours. But again, John Kasich is a bit like Trump himself. He hates everyone else other than himself. Everything is about himself. That is what it comes down to. That is all he cares about.
Well, he wants revenge for ever being born, is what it is.
Yeah.
And it comes down to it. See, Randy, you and I have had conversations where, I've alluded to and made the suggestion that Kasich staying in is actually a good thing, because what it does, it siphons, delegate votes or delegates away from Trump. But at the same time, it's hindering Cruz. Now, I still think that him being in there for a certain amount of time is good. But
he did cost a winner-take-all situation in Wisconsin.
Yes, he did. However, again, going back to Trump's mindset of, ducking and dodging, building up this wall of sandbags for him to have something to hide behind, Kasich is the last sandbag. Kasich is the last sandbag that is in the race. Now, I'm of the mindset now to where, you know what? It's time for him to get out because we're getting ever closer to this convention. And with Trump firing his campaign staff and all these other states, these primary states that have already occurred, he has nothing there to support his endeavor. We need to force Trump to come right out and make it known to people that he has no intention of winning. Kasich is holding that up. He's absolutely holding that up. And here's why. Because if Kasich gets out of the race, Trump will have no choice but to go head to head with Ted Cruz. And I think the timing for that is now. He absolutely has to do it now. I was thinking of, before June, but no, the timing is now because it has become evident with things that Kasich has said back in the beginning of the campaign. Oh, I wanted to run as a Democrat, but I know I wouldn't even have a chance if I did that. Nobody would support me. So he jumped ship of what he really is, which is a Fabian socialist. Because let's face it, folks, all Democrats are Fabian socialists.
At least in this day and age.
At least in this day and age. He jumped that ship and hooked up a little tow line to his little John boat raft that is being pulled behind the Democratic Trump-tanic type machine. And he's look at me. I'm out here all my lonesome. Have pity on me. I can do this. I can do this. I can get back on board. I can make things happen. And people are falling for it. And it's becoming damaging, not only to Cruz, but it's becoming damaging. It is damaging our country. It is damaging our republic way of life.
Yeah, because it goes against the fiber of everything that this country represents. And part of the thing is, if you can't win, then you shouldn't stay in. And let's face it, folks, when you look at all the models, it is mathematically, physically, scientifically impossible for John Kasich to win. Truly is.
Yes.
But he's so selfish that he only thinks about himself. And that is playing out in this great comedy of errors, for lack of a better term. When you look at him, what has he won? Ohio. That's about it, right? I don't think he's won another state, has he?
I don't believe so.
So, oh goody, congrats on winning your home state. Take your 19th place trophy and go home. Because you're just getting in the way of the serious people here. And you're working against all that we're fighting for. And we're tired of it.
Well, not only that, but you're creating a situation to where at the end of the day, people are going to have to do things that they never thought they were going to have to do. People are going to have to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And we, the people, are going to be forced into a situation to where tyranny is going to rear its ugly head, that vicious, venomous snake that it is, and we, the people, are going to have to chop the head off. It's going to come down to that. And folks, a lot of people say, oh, so you just want a bloody revolution. No. But
no.
If that's what it takes to preserve our republic, then guess what? I'm all for it. If that's what it comes down to, I would much rather look at the option that we have to avoid that, even if it is for 4 years. That is still 4 years that we have now with the time. It may not be a lot of time, and it really isn't. Again, it's not even a flash in the pan, but it is 4 years of having the ability to right the ship without bloodshed. If we don't allow that to happen, if we don't examine and pursue that option, then nobody is going to be prepared, because tyranny is going to be right there, right now. And nobody is prepared for that. I guarantee you, because 90% of the population will suffer immensely, tragically suffer.
Well, think about how much the people suffered in the American War of Independence. That was a long, drawn-out, bloody campaign. People lost their homes, their fortunes, their sacred honor, and it played out on the battlefield time and again. Families were split apart. My own family was split apart by that war, with split loyalties. And it just goes to show that these things are never easy. And that's why even our founding fathers went to great, extraordinary lengths to try and avoid the violence and bloodshed that became a part of that war. And that war lasted from 1775, when the first shots were fired, until the treaty was signed in 1781. That is a long time.
That's 6 years, folks. I would rather try to accomplish something in 4 years and have the chance of staving that off, because I'm going to tell you right now, the way that our country is, the mindset of the individual, the average Joe in this country, is more than subpar to the mindset of the individuals back at that time. Which means that it was 6 years then. We can equate that to possibly 30 to 50 years now. Times have changed.
I think double more so. I think 12 years.
Well, whatever the case is, it's going to be longer than what it was before.
Sure.
And that's just something that I don't want to see happen. I don't want to see that. But again, if that's what it comes down to, then my obligation as a United States citizen and a sovereign of this country, an ultimate wielder of sovereignty, I have to oblige it. I absolutely have to, as does every other individual along this thought process. Those of us who have a working understanding and knowledge of the Constitution, at that point, we have no choice. We absolutely have no choice, especially individuals who have taken an oath to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You have no choice. You have taken an oath. You have given your word. And as I was raised to believe, your word is your everything.
The valor of the American people comes from the Constitution. The Constitution tells us who we are. It lays out the proper scope and application of government. It lays out what is so important. If we ignore the Constitution, then we ignore what it is to be a popular sovereign. And you see, folks, that's what's so important about the American system of polity. It all comes from the fountainhead of we the people. We are the ones that allow this nation to exist. We are the ones that give life to this nation. We are the ones that will, if necessary, be the ones to lay down our lives to save this nation. That is how it has always been. That is what our founding fathers would expect of us. We cannot escape this duty. We cannot delegate this duty. This duty is non-negotiable. You see, that's part of the problem with Trump. Trump has said repeatedly that everything is negotiable. No, this is non-negotiable. Just as our fundamental and inalienable rights are non-negotiable, this duty, an obligation, which is the ultimate duty, obligation, and responsibility of the popular sovereigns, is non-delegable and non-negotiable. So you see, it all comes down, yes, it all comes down to what is contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution. That explains who we are, why we exist, what is important, and what we must be willing to sacrifice everything for. That is the quintessential part of being an American citizen. It is who we are, it is what we strive to achieve, and if we are to preserve liberty for the up-and-coming generations, and even for those generations which have yet to be born, we must be willing to stand stalwart in defense of it. And if that means putting down our lives, then it means putting down our lives. There is no way around that. There is no sugarcoating it. So We, as popular sovereigns, must take up the mantle. That is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are the new resistance. We are resisting the forces of tyranny, despotism, and oppression. All of those wannabe potentates that would strip and deprive us of everything, we will stand in their path and obstruct them and defeat them come hell or high water. That is our promise. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. We want to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you might have either here at our YouTube account or our Google Plus account or our Facebook page. And we also invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle of @RadioAviationEX. That's @RadioAviationEX. All one word, folks. One more time, @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board, which lists Jeremy's personal Twitter account, my personal Twitter account, our blogger account, and also our Cafe Press account, which has a bunch of trinkets and goodies. Tell them a little bit about it, Jeremy.
Well, you can enjoy the last round of alcohol and many, many more with our wonderful drinking glasses that have our emblem inscribed upon them. In fact, we actually have a couple of emblems. You can have just our standard Wright Flyer Radio Aviation X emblem, our logo, our original logo, artwork done by Randy himself. And you can also have our first class passenger logo. Show your support and show the world that you are indeed a first-class passenger of the Wright Flyer. You can do it with wearing a hat, a sweatshirt, and folks, even for those of you who like to enjoy and roll around in the privacy of your own home, we even have the option of offering sleep attire or even undergarments as well. So, dog tags, so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of good stuff on there. Show your support for us. Show your support for yourself. And show the world that you have a working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution by supporting the Wright Flyer.
Thank you again, folks. We'll see you next time. Do take care.